Happy Thursday.
You too.
Can you guys hear me? Oh yeah, it's better. It's getting closer. Getting closer. Hi, Dr. Linda. I see some familiar face. This might be a little bit too loud because I'm whispering now.
Okay.
Those lights are too bright, so I don't think that we need to have that much light. And shine it behind. Well, we are very happy to have you. If you've never been here at Gilead, welcome. Welcome to Gilead. Some of you, maybe you're coming from Mount Hope. Some of you might be coming from somewhere else. Regardless where you're coming from, we're happy to have you. We do those here on a monthly basis, sometimes several times a month, so I will circle back to that at the end, but we're really thrilled to have you. This is 2023 is going to be magnificent. Yes? Amen to that. How many of you here, by show of hands, I want to know how many people with wisdom are here in this room today. How many of you here knew and remember who Patrick Swayze was? This guy right here. Yes? How many of you here remember who Steve Jobs was? The Apple Man. Yes? When Patrick Swayze passed away, he was worth $40 million. When Steve Jobs passed away, he was worth $7 billion. That's a lot of money. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
How many of you here would be willing to trade places with one of those two guys tonight? How many of you? By a show of hands. Usually it's on the back row when people are not paying attention. They're like, me. I'm like, he's dead. They're both dead. Right? The reason why I'm telling you this is if I was to say to you tonight, would that be fair to say that if you don't have your health, your ability to provide for yourself or your family would be affected? Would that be fair to say that?
Yes.
Right? In the next 10, 15 years, whatever goals or dreams that you have, if you're not healthy, are you more likely or less likely to be able to make this happen? What do you think? Right? There's no trick question tonight, I promise you. Right? So over the next hour or so, hopefully less, but maybe more, you will discover the most powerful, the most natural, the most effective way to be healthy in all three circles. Maybe some of you are familiar with all three circles, but the goal is this year for 2023, right, is to work on your spiritual healing journey, is to work on your soul journey, healing journey, right? And it's also to work on your physical journey. Does that make sense? Right? Because all of you here tonight, right, if you truly want to be healthy, you have to work on all three circles. So we're going to be talking about that tonight, right? Because our topic, which is pretty amazing, this one topic will work on all three circles at the same time. That's pretty exciting, right? It's called fasting. I know some of you that might be scary for some of you, right? Some of you maybe it's not scary because you've done this for a long time, and maybe you'll hear a new little twist to it tonight. Maybe yes, maybe not. And by the time we're all said and done, right, I'll take a few questions. Hopefully they won't be too hard, right, and I can answer them. And then the ultimate goal here, this is what I want to pre-frame you tonight before you leave. Giving you great information is one thing, but if you don't take any action, then that's not going to do you a whole lot of good. Would you agree? Yeah. So I want you to make a commitment here that by the time you leave tonight that not only you're going to hear some information here tonight, but you're going to be taking action. Does that sound fair?
Yes.
Right? In John 15, 7 and 8, it says, I abide in you and you abide in me. Right? You get close to Him to nurture this relationship that you have with Him, but yet in James 1:22 it says, don't just be a hearer of the word, but be a doer of the word. What does that mean? Is you also have to be taking action. Right? So if you just hear great information, but yet you don't do anything about it, it's not going to do you a whole lot of good. Make sense? Right?
Right.
So how are you going to look like by the time we're done? I don't know. It's going to be one of those two things. Yes? Hopefully it's going to be the guy that's going to be on the right. So before we start, I just want to define what fasting means, right? Because I heard that this week and the week before that as people were preparing for it. It says refraining from food for a spiritual purpose. So I want to tell you our first, Dr. Denise and I, my first experience with fasting, we were in Atlanta, Georgia. That was back in the early 90s. Sounds like a long time ago. And we decided that we would be fasting because, I just heard that was a good idea. right? And it lasted about 30 minutes. The first fast food restaurant we drove in front of, we just pulled right over, and that was the end of our fast. What I'm trying to tell you here as we go through this, I believe, right, that if you're just trying to fast in the flesh, it's going to be much harder than, if you're doing it for a purpose, right, for a spiritual purpose. Now, probably just about all of you here, you can probably fast for 12 hours or 8 hours or 13 hours. Maybe some of you cannot fast for more than 3 hours because you have to eat all the time. But, if you're going to be fasting for days at a time, there's probably you got to have a greater reason for it, right, in order to make it through it. If you've done it a few times, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about right now. If you haven't, just hang out with me here for a minute. Fair enough? Right? Then on this next one here, it says, why fasting? In Matthew 6, right, it says, when you fast. So I just highlighted a few things here. If you want to have this PowerPoint, you can have it. I just need to have, if I have your email, we're going to be able to send that to you guys, right? So in Matthew 6 here, it says when you fast. It doesn't say if you fast. I just want to point this out. It's not like if, right? It says when. And then at the bottom here, it says, in 17, it says when you fast. It doesn't say if you fast. It says when, right? And it says, and your Father who sees you in secret your Father who sees in secret will reward you. So it doesn't say if, it says when. How many of you here have read the book by Pastor Dave, Radical Fasting? Any of you? It's a great book. If you've never read it, you should get it. It's a nice little book. It's great information in it. And it says, number one, it says starts with the end in mind. I really like that. Right? It says it causes you to focus on the rewards you seek, not your hunger. Right? Your hunger is like it's King's stomach. That's your hunger. Anybody knows about King's stomach? Right? What I'd like to say to you tonight is who runs you? Are you running your own body or your body's, who's running who here? Now, living in this world is pretty hard, right? When you live in the flesh, when you live in this world, to just not be run by your own body, that your body will just dictate what you're going to do. But you have to make the decision, right, that you're going to be the one running your body, that you're going to be the one running King's stomach. Because for many of us, oftentimes, your stomach is the king, right? It's kind of hard to say no. And then number two here, it says it allows us to see God's faithfulness when the answer comes, right? We need to write the rewards you are expecting. So I have this little piece of paper tonight. We're going to have copies for you. I don't think they're here right now, or maybe they are here, but we haven't passed them yet. But you're going to have something like this. Right? Matthew 6, again, it says when you pray. It doesn't say if you pray. Usually with prayer comes fasting. With fasting comes prayer. They come together. I guess if you don't eat, you have more time to pray. Yes? And then it says in 6, it says, but when you pray, it doesn't say if you pray. And then it says, your Father who sees in secret will reward you. And then we're the same verse about fasting. So the fasting here will do three things, which is pretty amazing. That's the only thing that I know of that will work on all three circles of healing. Right? Fasting will make your flesh submit. When you don't eat, that's pretty humbling. I mean, not for 3 hours. Well, maybe for some people for 3 hours, but when you don't eat for days at a time, that's pretty humbling. Right? Your flesh has to submit. And then number two, it says, right, fasting will also humble your soul, which is your mind, will, and emotion. And then fasting is a form of spiritual training. It's just like flex your spiritual muscles. With this one thing there, you can just work on all three circles. How about that? On Saturday, I'll be talking about this, the care clinic. We'll be talking about healing, right? And if I ask any one of you here tonight, say, do you believe that God wants you to be healthy? Do you believe that? Oh, yeah. Yes or yes? Yes. Yes. Do you believe that God that is the ultimate healer? Do you believe that? Yes. Right? The answer was yes and yes again. But you see this healing journey happen in all three circles. And that's important to understand that if you truly want to be, if you truly want to be healthy, and if you truly want to be living the life that God has for you, that you can just fulfill the assignment that He's put on your life, you got to be working all the three circles. And fortunately, fasting does that for all of us, if we choose to do it. Actually, it should not be a choice. If you're a believer, it should be like, it's not if, it's just like, it's going to happen. You're going to do it. Right? Look at this guy. In Romans 12:1, it says, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, right, to present your body as living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. This guy looks pretty tired, doesn't he? Yes? This next one, it says, Paul says in 1 Corinthians, it says, but I discipline my body and keep it under control. So the question is, again, is the same question, is like, well, are you controlling your body, or your body's controlling you? And let's just be honest, just for a moment. That's not an easy thing, is it?
No.
Right? Are you controlling your body, or your body's controlling you? So we live in a world that there's a lot of things that are enticing, right? That we can be involved with, and there's not a lot of rest time, right? In Romans 12:2 it says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. That's your soul. Why fasting? Why do we fast? In Luke 14 it says, for everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbled himself will be exalted. Humbling yourself before the Lord, and he will exalt you. James 4:10. And this last one in 1 Peter, it says, likewise, who you are younger, be subject to the elders. Clothe yourself, all of you, with humility towards one another, for God opposes the proud, but gives his grace to the humble. Yes? Why fasting? Right in the book of Psalm, David says, but as for me, when they were sick, my clothing was sackcloth, I humble my soul with fasting. In Psalm 69, it says, when I wept and humble my soul with fasting. Leviticus 16, and this shall be the statute forever unto you, that in the 7th month of the 10th day of the month, you shall afflict your soul. Right? Humbling your soul. They would do that through fasting. Ezra chapter 8. Ezra chapter 8 is pretty amazing to me because, right, he's about to make his way to Jerusalem with all of the stuff, all the goodies, right? All the goodies. There's wives, there's kids, there's things, gold, there's things that are really important stuff that he's about to make his way into Jerusalem on this trip. And instead of having the king's protection, right, worldly protection, Ezra's like, hey, listen, I want to be congruent with what I believe to be true, that God is the ultimate protector. So what we're going to do is we're going to be proclaiming a fast, right, for our protection on this trip so we can be protected. I want to be congruent. I want to talk to you a little bit about congruency tonight because this is important. Being congruent is, all of you said to me, you're like, Dr. Jean-Guy, God is the healer. I believe God wants me to be healthy, right? But then you get a cold and then you run to the doctor. You see what I'm saying? Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with the doctor. What I'm trying to tell you is like, hey, listen, if you truly believe that, God is the healer, God wants you to be healthy, right? I want you to know that your body is very smart, right? And when you have a fever, that's normal, right? When people are sick, they don't want to eat, that's normal. Do you understand that? Right? Sometimes parents will send me texts, they're like, hey, my kids don't want to eat, they don't feel well. I'm like, well, do you want to eat when you don't feel good? Don't you think that there's a reason for that? Right? But the only way you're going to get to that and understand that is because if you know more about how God made your body to work, you're going to be able to trust more because you understand how beautiful that is. right? If you were to be ill and if you were to have a virus or a bug inside of you, right? This army on the inside doesn't want to have to go to two places at one time. The army inside of you, it's called your immune system, just want to handle this one thing, doesn't want to have to digest food and then to go, to go to war against that bug. Do you understand that? Right? So we want to have the army all in one place, right? So we all going to go in one place. We're going to put all our mights together to make sure that we can handle that like right now. You see what I'm saying? God made your body to work. When you cut your finger, your body does. You don't need to be thinking that, how am I going to do that, right? Your body can heal from above, down, inside out. Yes? From above, down, inside out. From above, down, inside out. Yes? Amen. I understand that maybe your mom, she put this little Band-Aid on it and she kissed it. She's like, honey, it's going to get better. But this is not what healed it. Right? You see what I'm saying? If you were to fracture your forearm and you put a cast on it, the cast is not going to heal it. Your body is going to do that. Because God made your body to work. That's the way He made it to work. Your body can heal itself. You see what I'm saying? That's pretty amazing. And I want you to know that. I want you to be able to embrace that. Because that's important. Once you understand that, you're like, hey, you know what? This God is amazing. Right? We're moving along. In 2nd Chronicle, this King Jehoshaphat, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but he set his face to seek the Lord and proclaim a fast. Now, proclaim a fast. Right? This is kind of interesting about this king because, this happens in our life. I'm sure that there's many of you here tonight, you could come here and you could testify of what fasting did in your life. But what happened to this king right here is like, hey, he's like, listen, I have no chance against this opponent. I have no chance. I'm going to go to war right now and I know that all my people are going to die for sure. I got no chance. Is there time in your life that problems happen in your life and you're like, there's no chance, I have no chance. And then you turn around and then what happened is God did the heavy lifting, right? And then you're just going to come on the other side squeaky clean. Yes? Anybody can testify to that? Yes? A few of you? And maybe some of you just don't want to say it. But, I'm sure that happened at some point in time. That's exactly what happened. Right? Because he's like, listen, we're going to get our butt kicked. Right? And then when it's all said and done, here's what the prophet said to him. He's like, do not be afraid and do not be dismayed at this great horde. Right? For the battle was not yours but God. And by the time that this was all said and done, it's like, hey, you know what? We made it through. This God that we serve is amazing. Right? We just got to trust more. The book of Esther, as I'm reading through this here with the book of Esther, which is interesting if you've ever read that and you read it again and there's just new revelation that is being given to you. But, this lady there, she's thinking to herself, she's like, oh, you know what, I'm serving this king here and I'm going to be fine. And then his cousin is like, oh, well, maybe not. Right? When they find out who you are, you're gonna get it too. And then back in those days, Queen, Esther, she could not go see the king because unless, that he knew she was coming and he would, accept her, right? So there's only a certain time that she could, see him. So if you would go to see him at a time that you weren't supposed to go, then your chances is you could be dead, right? That's kind of a big punishment. You could be dead. It's not just like somebody's going to slap on your fingers. It's like, we're going to kill you, right? How's that sound? And then she's like, listen, we're going to have all of our people fast, right? She tells this to her cousin, and then by the time it's all said and done, right, she goes and see the king, and he's like, oh, what do you want, right? Whatever you want, I'm just going to give you half the kingdom. And when it's all said and done, right, they were planning on killing all the Jews, and when it's all said and done, the other thing, the opposite happened. But how did that started is because, right, they proclaim a fast, and they have like a spiritual purpose for the fast, and they had a demand. And some of you, maybe you started your fast, but what are you fasting for? What do you want out of it? Right? So there's different types of fast. In 2 Corinthians it says, but in all things, right, approving yourself as a minister of God in much patience and affliction and necessities and distress and stripes, imprisonment, tumults, I don't know if I say this right, but in labors and watching and fasting. And then Paul says, in wearing and painfulness and watching often and hunger and thirst and fasting often, and then in cold and nakedness. That sounds like there's not many of us that, have to go through this very often, right, of what Paul has been going through. And I know that there's times, because I talk to a lot of people think that, if I don't eat for 3 hours, I'm going to die. Right? They're like, I have hypoglycemia. So let me tell you a little bit about hypoglycemia. Now I just want to be real with you, try to make this practical, right? So you understand how your body works, because I'd like to just bring the two together. Right? The God that we serve is amazing. There's stories after stories in the Bible about fasting, about the benefit of fasting, what happened to God's people when people fasted, when people humbled themselves. Stories after stories. But I also want to tell you that, in the physical, in the natural, right now, what we know today in 2023, I want to just bring this together of truly how amazing that is and the benefit that you can get from fasting. And I just want you to know that right now that people are completely equipped to fast, but they're not equipped to overeat. Do you understand that? Right? So when a person is like, if I don't eat, I'm going to die, it's probably unlikely. Maybe one or two of you here, but I don't know what your situation is exactly, but for most people, right, you can you can be completely fine not eating for days at a time, and you're going to be fine. So if you think that you have hypoglycemia is a nutrition problem. It's not like a disease, right? So just don't claim it. It's not yours. So if it was you here tonight, I just want you to know hypoglycemia is just the symptoms that you're not healthy. And if we can get you healthier, this is going to go away, right? Because what that means is when you have hypoglycemia, that means that you have weak adrenals. When you have weak adrenals, that means you need to eat more fat, right? And you don't find fat in cake, cookies, candies, ice cream, bread, rice, and pasta. You just don't. You see what I'm saying? Right? You want to be eating more fat. If you eat more fat, then what happens is your adrenals are going to be happy. You're going to give them a rest. And then your body's going to heal itself, because that's the way God made your body to work. Right? But God did not design cake, cookies, candies, ice cream, bread, rice, and pie. He did not. Jesus did not feed 15,000. He did not feed 15,000 people with Aunt Millie's bread. Do you understand that? You see what I'm saying? Right? It is likely that bread was just better. Okay? I want you to understand that, because that's really important. In a month from now, we're going to be teaching a class that's called Eating God's Way, and then we'll go through the scripture and we'll talk about food. Right? But I just want you to know that, right, anything that is man-made, it's likely that it's probably not best for you. Do you understand? Right? How would you know what's best for you? Well, if there's no label on it, then that's probably what's best for you. Right? You see what I'm saying? Okay. So we just keep moving along here. It says there's a corporate fast, right, in Acts 13, 1 through 4. It says that while they were worshiping the Lord and then fasting, the Holy Spirit said, "Set apart from me Barnabas and Saul for the work to which I have called them." Right? Through fasting and prayer. You see that in the scripture over and over again. Through fasting and prayer, you people are being called, right, on their assignment of what God is calling them to do. Right? So at our church right now, at Mount Hope Church, if this is where you go, you know where it's at. You can just walk there, right? Just a few minutes. If you've never been there, Pastor Kevin, right, has called us to do a corporate fast, to fast together as a family, right, for 21 days. And then I hear people say, well, can I just fast from watching football? I'm like, well, football's over. What does it matter? I'm just kidding. I know nothing about football, so... I'm from Canada. I just know about hockey. Okay, maybe it's not finished. Maybe that would be a big punishment, right? But that's not what fasting is. Fasting is to refrain from food, right, for a spiritual purpose. That's what fasting is. And then here it says, when they had appointed elders for them in every church with prayers and fasting. Again, right, they committed them to the Lord whom they had believed. And then here there's different types of fast, so I know I'm going through this quick, but, there's questions that people are asking me over and over again, so we want to make sure we touch on it tonight, and then if you have more questions, I'll be able to answer that for you. Right? So you have people that do this total fast, right? Total fast is like water only, and I put up there, I said, no distilled water. So I want you to understand that this is really important. Maybe some of you, you've heard from the Lord, and you're like, I need to go on a fast. I just want you to know this is really, really important. And I want to explain to you why, right? If you have distilled water, which is only H2O, when you just drink just H2O with no minerals in it, then what happens is all the minerals are being sucked out of your cells, and it's dangerous. Understood? Right? So you got to understand. So if you were to have reverse osmosis at your house, a reverse osmosis system is basically just H2O. Right? There's not a whole lot of minerals in there. And so what I would suggest is if God's calling you to just do a water fast, I would say to you that probably the best water is to have spring water. And trying to buy spring water in a glass jar. Because spring water has minerals in it. Understood? Right? So this is really important. I want to make sure that you don't pass that. If you're called to do a fast that you're just like, I'm only going to drink water, you got to understand that we don't want to just have distilled water. Okay? We're good on that? Yes and amen? Okay, number 2 here, it says a modified fast where you can do some water and juicing. So now you're going to drink water, you're going to juice. So let me just tell you in the physical here, if you're called, now I just want to make this clear because, people they're going to take this and they're going to say Dr. Jean-Guy said, but sometimes I didn't say that. They just think I said that, okay? So let me make this clear. Dr. Jean-Guy is not a big fan. If God is calling you to do something, I wouldn't argue with God. However, Dr. Jean-Guy is not a big fast on people doing a juice cleanse or a juice fast because what happens is when you do juicing and it's loaded with sugar, then your adrenal glands, they go crazy and your blood sugar goes like that and your insulin goes like that, right? And as a result of that, then your body is not very happy. Now, you might be happy because you think you're dying if you don't have something that is sugar, right? But I'm just telling you that this is probably not the best thing that you can do for your body physically. And for the simple reason that when you just keep introducing sugar into your body, and most people already have problems with sugar, then what happens is anything that has to do with your blood sugar metabolism and your hormones, they're not very happy. Right? So your pancreas is going to have to work harder, your adrenal is going to have to work harder. So if you were to have carrot juice, or if you were to have beet juice, or if you were to have some of the other juices, right, you're taking all the fibers out of it, which when you take the fibers out of it, then even just, play with blood sugar even more, right? So again, I'm going to say it one more time in case I'm being like somebody's recording me, right? If God's calling you to do it, just go ahead and do it. I'm not going to argue with you. However, right, in the natural, if you're going to do a fast, right, and you're trying to do the best that you can for your body, for this fine machine of yours that God is giving you, and you want to improve your health, my advice to you is like, if you were to do some juicing, make sure that whatever juice you're using, that there's no sugar in it, right? Now, I understand it's not going to be really tasty. I get it. I understand. I get it, right? I get it. Talk about this every day. And then we have this thing called the Daigneault fast, which is, Daigneault, if you read the book of Daigneault, you go on for 21 days, and he's like, hey, you guys, all rich people, you can eat whatever you want, you can drink whatever you want, you can have all this great stuff, but, I'm only going to have water, fruits, and vegetables, and then see how that goes. And then after a few weeks, here's Daigneault and his people, and they all look great. That's not a big surprise, just so you know. So we have a program that, I've been using for many, many years, for more than a decade now, that it's a 21-day program. In the first 11 days, people only eat fruits and vegetables. Of course, if you've never done it, you think you're going to die the first day. But, after 21 days, I promise you that just about 99.9% of the people, they're very happy, right? And the reason why you're very happy is when you eat fruits and vegetables, those are God's food, right? And then what happens is you don't put anything that is man-made into your body, and then as a result of that, right, sometimes when people go on those kind of fast, the first day or two you might not feel so good, and then after that you're going to get this energy coming back into your body, and then you're going to start sleeping better, you're going to have more energy, you're going to be more happy, right? And there's a lot of great things that's going to happen. So if you've ever done it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But a Daigneault fast is like, people are like, once you get through this little hump, right, then you do great. So fruits and vegetables and water. By the time we get to the end here, I'm going to answer some questions, right? But I'm going through this here, and just write down your question, and we can go over that at the end. Then after that, it says skip a meal, intermittent fasting. So they make it sound out there that this intermittent fasting is like this new thing that is just like, it's new, right? And I got something to sell you, it's new. This intermittent fasting, you know, I mean, we did not know about it, but we just found out how good it is for you. I just want to say this to you tonight, right? Intermittent fasting is like, it is not new, right? 200-300 years ago, when people didn't have a fridge and didn't have a freezer and they didn't have anything to store all their stuff, right? When they woke up in the morning, they didn't look at their watch and like, hey, I'm going to have a glass of orange juice, a piece of toast, and oatmeal. They didn't say that. Number one, they didn't have that stuff because that's crap, right? They only had one or two choices. The choices were, we need to go kill something, or we're going to go up in a tree and get it, right? Do you see what I'm saying? So people would not eat for 15 hours, 18 hours, 24 hours. It would just happen naturally. Do you see what I'm saying? So intermittent fasting is not new, right? Some people try to make it sound like it's new. But I just want you to know that your body was completely designed not to eat. I know it's hard to believe, right? All of you here, it's hard. I mean, I'm just telling you that you don't have to eat, right? You can skip a few meals. Sometimes people are like, well, Dr. Jean-Guy, I was at the airport and he didn't have anything. I'm like, well, Jesus did fast for 40 days, right? And then the answer is always the same. They're like, yeah, but I'm not Jesus. I'm like, yeah, but I didn't ask you to do it for 40 days. I mean, just skip that one meal at the airport. It's just that one thing, right? You could do it, right? You could do it. So intermittent fasting, people that are teaching about intermittent fasting, it's like, okay, well, just don't eat for 12 hours. And then after that, don't eat for 13 hours, 15 hours, 18 hours. Only eat during the, this 6-hour time or 8-hour time. From a health perspective, if you decide to do that, what I would like to say to you is just make sure that you don't do anything that's going to trigger sugar metabolism. So if you were to have coffee and then you put some half and half in there and there's sugar, then what happened is your body is going to trigger sugar metabolism, right? So your body's going to start breaking down glycogen out of your liver, and then your pancreas is going to have to work, and then your adrenal is going to have to work. You see what I'm saying? Now you're breaking the fast because your body will always take the path of least resistance. Your body is just kind of like, human beings. We take the path of least resistance. So if the sugar is there, the body's always going to go after the sugar first instead of going after your own fat. So do you want the body to go after the sugar you put in your body, or you want your body to go after your own fat? Which one? That's right. She's like, fat! Right? But if that's what you want, then you got to create an environment where your body's going to do that. So every time that there's sugar around, your body's going to take the path of least resistance, which is always sugar. Right? And sugar is where? It's everywhere. Right? Everywhere. Okay? It's everywhere. So if you're truly going to do intermittent fasting and you're like, okay, I'm not going to eat for 18 hours, well, you really have to make sure that you're not eating for 18 hours. And if you were to have some drinks, you got to make sure that those drinks are not stimulating sugar metabolism. Okay? Now, could you have stevia? The answer is yes, because I know some of you are going to ask, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. Could you have monk fruit? Yes, you could do that. I mean, could you have coffee? Yeah, for most people, they can have coffee, right? You cannot have like 16 pots of coffee. But you could have a cup of coffee, right? So anything if it doesn't have any sugar in it, then your body will still continue to look for fuel. And when the sugar is not there, then the body goes after the fat. Right? When the sugar is not there, your body goes after your fat. How's that sound? I'm going to teach you a little bit about that at the end. It's really exciting. Okay? We're not there yet, though. And then it says a personal fast of choosing. Right? Pastor Kevin was talking about that on Sunday. It's like, well, you can skip a meal. You can skip 2 meals. You can you can decide whatever the Lord's putting on your heart. Right? What are you going to do? This guy today said to me, he's like, well, I'm going to be fasting from meat. I'm not going to eat any meat for 21 days. So whatever that looks like for you. I just want you to understand that if you're going to be fasting, and the goal here is, as you're going through this, humbling your soul and then having this spiritual training that you're doing, how about if you were to improve your health at the same time in the physical? Right? But if you continue to dump a whole bunch of sugar in your body at the same time, it's not going to happen. Right? And then I also learned this a few years ago, so let me tell you this. Right, Dr. Jean-Guy's been fasting on Monday for the most part for the past many years. On Monday, I usually don't eat, right? But here's what happened when you get used to do that. When people are getting used to fast, and I'm sure many of you here, you can just testify to that. Then the question is, you can fast in the physical and it's easy, right? But at some point, it's not a sacrifice, to the Lord anymore. It's not sacrificial. So if it doesn't come with a little bit of this is going to be a little hard, right? So once you get used to it, then, the question is if you're just doing it in physical, you don't need to ask yourself any question. I'm just telling you that my experience. When you do it a lot and it's just in the physical, then it becomes easy. You can just go and just not eat for days. But if you're fasting for a spiritual purpose, right, the question is, are you doing it sacrificially? Right, and what's the purpose of it? Understood? Okay, so then how long do you fast? 1 day, 3 days, 21 days, 40 days. Right? You can do a lot of different ways. So let's talk about coming out of the fast, and then right here it says freshly made fruit and vegetable juice. It says freshly, you making it yourself, fruits and vegetables. Yes? The reason for that is because when you've been fasting for a while and you start eating, you just feel like, I just can't put any food in because my stomach is just shrunk. Right? Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yes? I see some yes. Or maybe you don't know if you've never done it long enough. Right? You're like, my stomach can still take a lot. But usually if you've been, fasting, your stomach is going to be don't put too much stuff there. Right? So then you're going to have this thing, freshly made fruit and vegetable juice. I would recommend to use more vegetables than fruit because of the sugar portion of it. And then it says raw fruits, low in fructose. We're going to go over this chart in a minute. Bone broth, fermented food like yogurt, unsweetened kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi. Yes? Anything that is fermented is good for the gastrointestinal tract. It's going to repopulate your gut right here, this little guy right here. Right? 80% of your immune system is right here. 80% of your immune system right here. Did you know that fasting is really good? I like to say we just came out of COVID, but I'd like to think we've been out of COVID for a while now. Right? Anything that has to do with your immune system, right? That fasting is really good for your immune system. If you feel like something is coming on and you just stop eating, that's going to be your body's going to be really happy. Right? If you can do this really quickly. Because then what happens is your immune system can take over, right? Doesn't have to worry about digesting food because digesting food is metabolically expensive. Right? Digesting food is metabolically expensive. Understood? Digesting food is metabolically expensive. So when you don't eat, it's giving a break. Right? Body likes it. And then it says cooked vegetables, mushy stuff. It's easy to digest. Vegetable soup, right? Steamed vegetables. So coming out of the fast. You're not going to be able to see this real good, but we do this thing at our office. It's called the body composition analysis, and we can see what's happening in people's body while people do those kind of things. And I just want to share with you a few things because that's important. One of the things that we look at is this thing here at the bottom. Those two things, it says your body water. Right? Your body water. This person here, where they were 278 pounds, you probably cannot read that. But their body water was 34%. Your body water should be anywhere between, right, 50 to 65%. If you're a man, that's 55 to 65. If you're a female, it's between 50 and 60%. That's where your body water should be. Right? And the vast majority of the people that we do this test on, probably, I would say 90%, the body water is way below that, somewhere in the neighborhood between 34 to 47 or 48. 90% of the time. And I know some of you are sitting here tonight and you're like, boy, that's impossible because I drink gallons of water. I just I'm in the bathroom all the time. I get up 17 times at night, right? And I want you to know that being hydrated, for your cells to be hydrated, right? It's not just drinking water. There's 3 things that needs to happen for your cell to be hydrated and for you to gain health. So I want you to listen to me here for a minute. If you're not going to remember, probably you need to write it down, right? Or it's probably somebody is recording me. Hopefully they're not going to misquote me. Okay, there's 3 things that needs to happen. Number 1 is, yes, you need to drink water. But then number 2 is you got to be able to digest food properly, because if you don't digest food properly and you're taking medication like proton inhibitors or antacid or Prilosec or those medication, right? They're called proton inhibitors. When you take those medication, what it does is it shuts down the absorption of minerals. And when you don't have enough minerals in your body, then your body cannot take the water that you drink and keep it inside the cells. And then as a result of that, then you get dehydrated, and then your health starts declining. And then what happens is as you get older, I mean, not me, but you guys, as you get older, then what happens is it gets harder, right? You're like, well, when I was young, I could eat anything I wanted. It would go in, would go out. That was not a problem. I would not be, wouldn't put 1 pound on. But now that I'm like 26, 42, 52, it's really hard to lose weight, right? And the reason for that is because when people have a hard time, when their cells are dehydrated, your metabolism goes down. You see what I'm saying? When your cells are dehydrated, your metabolism goes down. So when your metabolism goes down, you just look at the food and you put weight on. Matter of fact, you're going to be on the fast, you're going to put weight on. How's that sound? You're like, really? I'm not going to eat, and I'm not going to have any body reward, right? Because I'm sure that maybe some of you, that's happened to you, right? Because if you go on a fast and you do it half-fast, you think you're doing a fast, but you're still introducing sugar and you're not forcing your body to go into this thing called autophagy, right? Your health is going to continue to decline even if you don't eat. But you might be thinking, well, I'm doing something good for myself. I'm going on a fast, right? But in your physical body, you're not improving your health. And how do we know that? Is because when a person comes in and we do this right here in our office, our nutritionist does that. We do this thing called the body composition analysis, and we look at those things right here, right? So this is really important. So if some of you here tonight, you leave and you're like, hey, I want to take action, but I think I need some help, right? We can help you with that. We can hold your hands through this, because we do this to find out where you're at and what you need to do to change that. And then at the bottom it says, right, it says visceral rating fat. So you should have fat around your organ, but when you have too much fat, it makes you more prone to have cancer, to have heart disease, to have a stroke. How's that sound? Not so good? Right? Who wants that? Okay, nobody. Very good. Me neither. Right? So what happened is this number here should be below 12. Right? You see how this person here, they're like 33. That's kind of bad. Right? This is like a heart attack waiting to happen. Right? That's really what I want to share with you tonight. Is Pastor Kevin and I, we have those discussions, frequently. It's like, Dr. Jean-Guy, man, I just wish this person, they would have been a Gilead before. They just passed away. I did a funeral. Right? And Dr. Jean-Guy's, my expertise is in health and wellness. And guess what? I don't want people to have cancer to start doing something about it. Why would you do that? Why would any of you here tonight would wait until you have cancer before you start working on your health? Why would you do that? How about if you start working on your health right now while you're feeling half good? Right? I understand maybe some of you don't feel so great right now. But there's no point for you to wait until you have cancer to start doing something about it. Right? Yes? Jim say yes. Yeah, he says yes. Right? Jim said yes. We're in agreement. Right? That's the reason why Pastor Kevin and I, we are in a quest, to just make people in this town, in this community, at our church, the healthiest people there is in this town, in this community, in this state. Right? And people understanding that health comes from all the three circles. Your health comes into your body, right? Your physical health, but you also have your soul health. You also have your spiritual health. And they all work together. And fasting can be very powerful. Matter of fact, it is powerful. As a matter of fact, it is the most powerful thing that you can do, right, to work those three circles. So that's called the BCA, body composition analysis. So those are the side effects of fasting, right? I don't call them side effect. It's just like, I like to call it a healing crisis. Right? It's a healing crisis. So a person might be dizzy, you might have a headache, low blood sugar, your muscle might be aching, weakness, fatigue, prolonged fasting can lead to anemia, right? You probably would have anemia if you don't do it right? Weakened immune system, liver, kidney problem. Those cases and those side effects, it almost never happen when a person knows what they're doing, or they're walking this journey with a person that knows what they're doing. Right? Maybe some of you might need to have a holistic, medical doctor. We have that here, Dr. Holmes, in this place, right? That can walk this, with you if you choose to. We have a nutritionist, Helena. She's done this hundreds of times with people. If this is a concern of yours, but this almost never happened, right? When people have symptoms, it just means like you've been treating your body so like poorly for all those years that then your body's like, okay, I'm going to get back to you here for a day or two. So now just imagine you've been a pain in my, you know what, for like all those years. And then it's going to be like 1 or 2 days that you're not going to feel right. And then people would send me an email, they text, and they're like, oh, I'm just going to quit. I'm like, don't do that. Right? The best is just about to come. Right? So don't quit. What I want to say to you tonight is like, hey, don't quit. Just keep at it. Just keep at it. Right? This little like, whatever, however you're going to feel, right? Maybe you might have a fever, or maybe you're going to have muscle ache, or whatever that might be. It's short term. It's short term to get a big reward. Right? Not just in your physical body, but in everything in your life. So don't quit. Don't quit. Then what's going to happen on the inside is your fat, your lipid profile is going to get better, right? It's not going to get better the first 30 days. I'm going to tell you right now, the first 30 days, don't go to the doctor to get a blood drawn, because I guarantee you that, all the fat you have in your body, they're going to be in your bloodstream. Because what happened is your body is getting rid of your fat through your kidneys. When a person goes through autophagy, can you say autophagy with me? Yeah, that's a nice word. You should look that up when you leave tonight. It's called autophagy. Say that one more time, autophagy. It's going to be up on the board in a minute. One more time. Autophagy. When you go into autophagy, what happens is your body is eating its own fat. And when you eat your own fat, then your body's going to get rid of your own fat through your kidneys. So then it has to be mobilized. And while it's mobilizing, if you were to have a blood drawn being taken by your doctor or the lab, right? Those lipids, they're not going to look so good. Right? And then the doctor is going to be like, see, I told you, you need to take my drugs. Right? FYI. Your blood sugar is going to start coming down. Right? I promise you, if you're a diabetic, if you have hypoglycemia, people can do a fast. Right? You can, 100%. Right? When people are diabetic and they take glucophage or they have a pump on themselves, the goal here is not. Right? Now listen to me here if you're diabetic, because there's many people that are. Right? People think that when they're diabetic, when their blood sugar goes down, they just think they need to eat more sugar to level it out. Tell me this makes sense to you. Okay? But people do that all the time. Right? I want you to know that if you're diabetic, or even if you're not one, when your blood sugar goes down, and if you're diabetic, what it means is you need to take less drugs. That's what it means. How does that sound? Would you be healthier if you take more drugs or less drugs? Very good. Thank you very much. You guys all have like PhD right now. Right? All of you here, you already know that, you know what? You're going to be healthier if you take less drugs. So the goal over time is to take less drug. So if your blood sugars start coming down, right? Because you're becoming healthier. That's the reason why if you're taking medication, somebody needs to follow you. Right? You need to check your blood pressure. You need to take your blood sugar, because what happens is as you get healthier, guess what's going to happen to your blood pressure? As you get healthier, guess what happened to your blood sugar? It's going to come down. Right? How's that sound? I mean, does that sound bad or not? That sounds pretty good to me. Right? And then what's going to happen is blood pressure will come down, and then we talked about being hypoglycemic. Okay, we're good. You guys are doing good. We're almost there. Right? The benefit of fasting, you're going to reverse chronic illnesses. I mean, literally, if you go into autophagy, we're getting there. I have a whole slides on that. Okay, don't write it down yet. You're going to be able to reverse chronic illnesses. Miracles are going to happen. You're going to lose weight. Your mental clarity is going to be better. You're going to have more energy. You're going to sleep better. You're going to digest your food better. Right? Your liver is going to regenerate itself. Do you know that there's like millions of people that have liver cirrhosis, they're not even drinking? Right? And the reason why people have liver cirrhosis in this country, and there's so many people with liver cirrhosis. Now listen to me for a minute. Right? The reason why there's so many people with liver cirrhosis in this country is because when you eat cake, cookies, candies, ice cream, bread, rice, and pasta, and you eat a bunch of sugar, and you do that day in and day out, right? Your body can only store 500 grams of sugar, and after that, your body will just store all that stuff into fat. And then you start developing a fatty liver, right? And then your liver is just like, it's congested, it's dying, the channels are just like, they're all clogged up, right? Your liver has about 600 different functions, but one of the functions is to cleanse your body. And then what happened is the body doesn't have the ability to cleanse itself anymore because you've been eating so many cake, cookies, candies, ice cream, bread, rice, and pasta. Right? So then you start developing liver cirrhosis and fatty liver. But guess what? That can be, the liver is the most regenerative organ in the body, which is amazing. Right? So God can take this crummy liver that you treated poorly for all those years, and He can just turn that around and just heal that completely. Isn't it amazing? Yes or yes? Yes. The answer was yes. Right? Skin disease. I want to tell you a little bit about the skin. People that have skin problem, they don't have skin problem, they have an inside problem. Right? Are we all in agreement? Maybe even if you're not, you just need to say yes. Skin problem or not a skin problem, they're the inside out problem. Right? It's from the inside. The problem is from the inside. When the body, your skin is the largest organ in your body, and when the inside is not happy, your body's going to push it on the outside. Right? Because your skin is the largest organ. Right? So if you don't like, this your skin, and you're just like, I don't like those pimples, and I don't like those strawberries, and I don't like whatever that is, and you're putting all this stuff on, and you're spending a lot of money. Right? Believe me, you could save a lot of money if the inside would be getting healthier. Do you understand that? Right? Just imagine for all of you ladies here, and I see just maybe one or two, right? I mean, almost just like all of you, right? From the time you were like 7 years old, or maybe from the time you were born, you were just told that you got to put all this stuff on your skin to be pretty, to look good, to smell good, right? And you do this for decades at a time. Your body has no chance. Right? And then by the time you're 12 years old, then you have cramping, and then you have heavy flow when you have your cycle, and then, somebody had the genius idea, we're going to bring you to the doctor, and then we're going to give you some hormones, right? It's called the birth control pill. It's made out of estrogen, right? We're going to give you more chemicals that your liver cannot detoxify, right? And when the body is overwhelmed, it's going to push it through the skin. How's that sound? Does that sound like a good plan? No. Right? Your symptoms went away for a little bit, but then what happened is that we're just killing you softly. Who wants to sign up for that program? I mean, no more. You don't need to, right? Because God wants you to be healthy. I promise you. Here it says, what about medication? Can you fast if you're taking medication? The vast majority of the time, the answer is yes. But if you're not sure, right, you should have somebody that's going to hold your hands through this process. And I promise you, you can do it, right? In most cases. When people are fasting, if you're fasting and you're not just drinking water and you decide to eat, you got to make sure you have some good fat, because when you have some good fat, remember, your body's going to take the path of least resistance. The path of least resistance is always sugar, right? So if you have sugar of any sorts, okay, sugar is not just eating candies. Candies is straight sugar, but if you have oatmeal, that's sugar too. If you have bread, that's sugar too. If you have like corn chips, that's sugar too, right? If you have rice, that's sugar too. Do you understand that, right? So those things, they break down in sugar. If you eat like, even carrots are sugar, even beets are sugar. I'm not telling you not to eat beets or carrots. I'm just telling you that you got to understand that even if you were to eat real food, you would get plenty of sugar. Right? Understood? Right? So you got to eat some good fat. Here's the Kirkland Costco organic chicken stock, right? We're looking for no sugar. Right? That's what we're looking for. You don't want to trigger anything that has to do with sugar metabolism. I want to show you this little chart here. You can probably find it on Dr. Google, but I want to show you this. Right, this little circle here, it says 31.95, right? That's 31%. That's the amount of fructose in fruit. It's not the amount of sugar in fruit, it's the amount of fructose in fruit. And the reason why I'm showing you this tonight is because, now listen, right? There's a lot of books that's been written by scientists or people that are much smarter than I am. Right? I just repeat stuff, right? I read it and I repeat it. I mean, if I think it makes sense. But this makes a lot of sense to me because there's a lot of stuff to back it up, right? There's a book called the Fat Switch, right? So many scientists believe that, really what turns this switch to make fat into your body is fructose. And the reason for that is because, right, people eat a lot of high fructose corn syrup. So all this stuff that we have that is genetically modified in our country, like corn, wheat, soy, right, it's genetically modified, it's cheap, we use it to do everything. So when people have high fructose corn syrup, it's believed to be the fat switch. So if you're trying to be on a diet or eating fruits that have the lowest amount of fruits, the fructose in it, right? The one that has the most is dates. And then you have raisin, and then you have figs, and then you have apricot, and then prune. The one that has the least, it says lime juice, cranberry, apricots, lemon juice, nectarine, peaches. Those that have the least amount, right? So if you were to be like having some health concern, right? Maybe you have diabetes, maybe you're overweight, maybe you're like, hey, listen, that makes sense to me. I'm going to make sure I have the fruit that have the least amount of fructose in it. That would be a good idea. Right? This is not the least amount of sugar, it's the least amount of fructose. That's different. Okay? There's this book called Life Without Bread. I know that none of you want to read it, but let's just pretend. Right? Let's just pretend. Those are two German physicians. This guy's name is Lutz, right? And then this guy, Alan, they're both smart people. Right? So here's what it says. If a person was 200 pounds, right? Let's just pretend. And they're on a 2,000 calorie diet. Your body needs only, right? Your body needs about 50 grams of sugar per day, 50 to 75. Right? 50 to 75 grams of sugar per day. Whether it's Hershey Kisses or whether you have multiple apples, you need about 50 to 75 grams of sugar per day. 1 gram of sugar is 4 calories. So let's say that I'm being generous tonight because it's, you're on the fast. I'm going to be generous, but you can't have it, right? And then let's say that you can have 100 grams of sugar, of carbs, of any kind. Whether it's like straight sugar, whether you have, you have oatmeal, 100 grams. That's about 400 calories. You follow me? 400 calories, but you're on a 2,000 calorie diet. And then for every gram of protein, you should have about half of your body weight in grams of protein. So if you're 200 pounds, about 100 grams, right? So let's say 100 grams for every gram of protein is 4 calories. So it's 400 grams. You follow me? So far, so good? So your body needs about half your body weight in protein. Your body needs about half your body weight in, anywhere between 50 grams to 75 grams, 100 grams of sugar. I'm just being generous, right? 400 calories. Now what's left over here, it's 400 plus 400 is 800 in my book, right? I'm not really good at math, but 800. And then we have 2,000 minus 800. It's 1,200 calories should be coming from fat. Right? You see this here? It says from fat. 1,200 calories should be coming from fat. 1 grams of fat, it's 9 calories. 1 gram of fat is 9 calories. Right? So then what happened is most people in life, I would dare to say that most of you here in this room, you just don't eat enough fat. Okay? We don't eat enough fat. Because when you eat enough fat, then your brain tells your belly that you're full. Right? But when you don't eat enough fat, then what happens is your brain never tells your belly you're full, so you just want to eat all the time. Right? And you know what people say to me? Now listen, this is a good one. Right? People are like, Dr. Jean-Guy, the only thing that's going to satisfy my appetite is eating rice. I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Right? Of course, they just want to eat carbs. Right? Because what happened is, your center for taste has just been completely destroyed. Okay? So there's 2 things you should try to avoid, the best that you can is anything that says low sugar and low fat, you want to avoid it. Right? Because if it says low sugar, that means they're using artificial sweeteners in there. And then artificial sweeteners is known to just destroy your hypothalamus. Right? I'm not going to ask you to pick your nose tonight, but your hypothalamus is if you go in your nose here and you go a little bit further, it's right in the middle of your brain. Right? That's where your hypothalamus is. And it's in charge of 2 things. Number 1, it's in charge of fluid retention. And number 2, it's in charge of your appetite. So what happened is when you have a lot of artificial sweeteners, it destroys your hypothalamus. Remember, don't pick your nose, but I'm sure you're going to remember what I just said. Right? You get up here, that's your hypothalamus. It's in charge of 2 things, fluid retention, right? And your appetite. So what happened is the more people eat stuff that is low in sugar, right, the more that they're hungry. Because it destroys your hypothalamus.
You said low in sugar?
Yeah, anything that says low in sugar or low in fat. So if it's low in sugar, they're going to put artificial sweeteners in it, right? And if it's low in fat, then they're going to put a lot of sugar in it. Then you're like, yeah, I eat a low-fat diet. Why would you do that? Right? No go. Okay, so this is Life Without Bread. You guys should read it. I mean, not that you want to, but let's just, maybe you do. So there's many different names for sugar. There's a few of them. At the top left here, it says stevia, monk fruit. People always ask me, stevia okay? Yes, it is okay. Right? Can you have monk fruit? Yes, because those 2, they don't affect your blood sugar. Right? And on the far right, it says aspartame and Splenda. Another name for Splenda is sucralose. So there's a lot of people that have a problem with sucralose because when they see sucralose, they think it's natural sugar. But sucralose is Splenda. So you want to stay away from aspartame and those 2. Yes? That's important. Because if you go on a fast, maybe some of you are going to try to find ways where you don't want to do sugar, right? But at the same time, you're trying to sometimes people are like, well, water tastes bad. I'm like, oh, interesting. I didn't know water tasted anything, but hey, you can put some stevia in your water maybe, right? Okay, we're good? We're moving along here. You guys are doing great. We're going to get to this exciting topic. I mean, everything is exciting, but this word, it's called what? It's called autophagy. I'm going to read this here for you. Check this out. If you can go look this up on Dr. Google. There's thousands. There's thousands of articles in the medical literature about this. It says autophagy is a natural, regulated mechanism of the cells that removes unnecessary or dysfunctional components. It allows the orderly degradation and recycling of cellular component. I mean, this might have been Chinese to you, but I'm just telling you this is good stuff. Because what happens is when you get into autophagy, your body's going to start eating your own fat. It's going to start with the bad fat cells, and then it's going to move towards, towards what is less damaging to the body. That's pretty exciting. That's the reason why people go on fast when they have cancer, they have heart disease, they have whatever, right? And their body starts healing itself. Because if you're truly in autophagy, your body's healing itself. Your body's going to heal from, liver diseases. Your body's going to, is going to heal from, a person that has cirrhosis of the liver, but person's going to heal from whatever, right? Because you're creating an environment for the body to heal itself. It's through autophagy. Then it says autophagy is the body's ways of cleaning itself out, the damaged cells, in order to regenerate newer, healthier cells, according to this guy who's really smart, right? It says auto means self, and then phagy means eat. So literally it means autophagy, you self-eat. So when you can put your body into autophagy, your body's really happy. Understood? Right? But when you eat cake, cookies, candies, ice cream, bread, rice, and pasta, then you don't do that. Right? So if you're really excited about the word autophagy, you cannot be excited at the same time with cake, cookies, candies, ice cream, bread, rice, and pasta. Because they don't work together. You see what I'm saying? They just don't. Right? But when you fast, you go into autophagy, and it's just like the most wonderful place to be. Right? Some of you have experienced that because you're like, hey, you know what? When I start fasting, then I'm just not hungry anymore. Well, the reason why you're not hungry is because your body's eating its own fat. And if your body's eating its own fat and you have a little bit of fat on you, right? Your body has plenty to eat, right? And you're not starving. It's eating itself. Okay? Now, some of you, you're just real skinny, then you don't have that problem, right? But your body is still equipped to go into autophagy, right? And to be able to heal itself, regardless of who you are, right? Regardless of who you are. That's exciting stuff, okay? Now I want to remind you as we're finishing this up, before I take some question. In 3 John it says, Beloved, I pray that all may go well with you and that you may be in good health. Right? God wants you to be in good health, and it goes well with your soul. He also wants you to have He wants you to be healthy in all 3 circles. This next one here, it says in Jeremiah 29:11, which many of you know, it says, For I know the plans of the Lord that I have for you, declares the Lord, right? Plans for welfare, not for evil, and to give you a future and hope. And then last in 1 Peter it says, He himself bore our sin in our body, right, on the tree, that we might die to sin and live to righteousness. By His wound, right, you've been healed. This is like Isaiah 53. He wants you to be healthy, just so you know, in case you have any doubt. He truly wants you to be healthy. I want every one of you here to know whatever chronic illnesses that you might have, or maybe you don't have yet, or maybe you think that things runs in your family. The thing that I really do not like to hear in our office is when people say, Dr. Jean-Guy, this runs in my family. I'm like, the only thing that runs in people's family is silliness, right? Because if you do the same thing over and over again, right, the outcome's going to be the exact same thing. Heart disease doesn't run in people's family. Only silliness runs in people's family. If you make the same decision and you do the same thing will happen, right? Do you understand? If you make the same decision, the same thing is going to happen. There's hundreds of thousands of women in this country that have the breast cancer gene, but yet they don't develop cancer. Breast cancer is not, right? It doesn't run in people's family. You might have the gene of breast cancer, but it doesn't mean you're going to develop breast cancer, right? Because what happened is your gene, whatever bad gene that you might have, it's like a big library of books, and you decide which one you're going to be pulling off the shelf, which is pretty exciting. That means that there's something you can do about it, because God wants you to be healthy, right? Okay, I only have like 2 people agreeing with me. That's really nice. That's really nice. Okay. So, this being said, I was telling at our team meeting just like a week ago or maybe 2 weeks ago, I asked our team, they just were looking at me weird for a minute, but just a little while ago I was reading this story about the difference between bison and cows when there's a storm, right? Anybody knows the story about bison and cows? Besides our team people? Yeah, this guy, he's like, yeah. Right? And to me, that really hit home when I was reading about the bison and about how the cow, when there's a storm, you know, the difference between what the bison's going to do and what the cow's going to do, right? What the cow's going to do when there's a storm is the cow's going to do this, right? The storm is coming and the cow's going to be like, can I just avoid it a little bit longer? Can I just wait before I just, get to it, Can I just wait a little bit longer? But yet the bison, right, the way that they just like, as soon as the bison see the storm coming, the storm is coming, the bison's going to go right through it, right? Going to be like, let's get through this right now. And I was thinking, I'm like, hey, listen, all of you's health right now, right? How about being a bison starting tonight, right? That you're going to be like, hey, listen, people having diseases, it's just going to happen if you don't do anything about it. There's no such thing as being still. And it's like, I'm going to be fine. Because you won't. The storm is coming, right? It's called the world. So you can choose to just do something for your health while you can, right? Or you can just say, oh yeah, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be fine. No, you're not going to be fine. We already know that you're not going to be fine, right? And I don't want Pastor Kevin to say to me, you're like, well, this person died again and they should not have died, right? I don't like to hear that. I'd like to hear like, hey, listen, people are going to do something right now. Let's not wait, right? In 2023 is going to be your best year ever for your health. Every one of you here, this is what I pray over you, right? Because you deserve it and God wants that for you, right? So if you feel like, hey, maybe there's another step for you, it's like, what's the next step? I just wanted you to know that we're just here to help you at Gilead, right? So we have our nutritionist, our holistic medical doctor. If this is like your next step, this young lady back there, she's going to raise her hand. Her name is Brandy. She's been working since she was like 5 years old for me, right? That's Brandy. And she's 12 now. I'm just kidding. But Brandy's going to be the one if you are, right? If you're like, I'm ready for my next step and I want to schedule a nutritional appointment, right? And when you make an appointment tonight, your investment is $65, right? Which is really a spit in the bucket. I mean, if you think about it. I was just talking to this lady. I was in Montreal to see my mom 2 week ago now. Right? I had not seen my mom in like 3.5 years. And then I went to the nursing home to see this lady, and there's a bill that was right on the corner of the table. That was a bill that this lady had to pay for her to be at the nursing home, right? And the bill at the nursing home for her monthly fee was like $5,900, right? And just so you know, this is like government, in Canada, this is like the government pays for, some of that bill, right? This is like her bill that was coming out of her pocket, right? Because what they do is they take all the money out of their pocket until they go bankrupt, and then after that, right, then they're going to put you in a place where they're going to take care of you less than what you were taking care of that last place, right? I want you to know that people will pay either one way or the other, right? You can either invest in your health so you can continue to enjoy life, right? Or you can just wait. There's going to be a price to pay one way or the other, right? One way or the other. So if you feel like your next step is like, hey, you know what? I'm ready to just take a step forward here and I need somebody to help me out. Hey, go ahead. Schedule your appointment, right? We have classes here on a monthly basis. Next month, we're going to have a class. It's called Bulletproof Your Immune System. Right? Does that sound good? Yeah. Right? All of you should be there with all your friends. Matter of fact, we're going to feed people. I'm not sure if I should say that in front of all of you, but we're going to be feeding people. Right? The month after that, we're going to have a class. It's called Eating God's Way. We're going to go through the Scripture. We're going to pull out the stuff from the Scripture that talks about, right, that what does that mean, eating God's way? I understand there's like 57 diet out there, right? But how many of you truly, you just love being on a diet? How many of you? Right? Very good. None of you. You're just like, I don't want to be on a diet. Right? How about if you were to be eating God's food? God's way. Right? Would that sound better? Right? So there's classes here that is happening on a monthly basis for all of you and your friends. And I just want to invite you personally. Me being the clinic director here in this place, I just love you all. I just want to say thank you for being here tonight. We're going to finish this up right now. I'm going to answer some question. Hopefully I can answer the question. And, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, and then you guys can go. If you just don't want to be here for the question and answer, Dr. Cody here is going to be passing, as I'm answering question, he's going to be passing this piece of paper that I made today. I made this little piece of paper. Well, actually, I didn't make it, but I push on the print button, right? And we're going to pass this little piece of paper, and it says, my 21-day plan. And then it's going to say, I'm going to pray for, I believe for, and then what is my plan? If you don't plan to succeed, you're going to be planning to fail. Okay? If you don't plan to succeed, you're going to plan to fail. So what is your plan? Right? Some of you, maybe your plan, you don't want to have a plan because you're just afraid of failing. Right? We all fall. You just need to get back up. Right? Just tell somebody what you're going to do. Just have it as an accountability partner. Just write it down. What is your plan? Right? So Dr. Cody is going to start passing that right now. And then I am done here. We have all the information here about Gilead. If you want to have this PowerPoint, we're going to have it. I can send it in an email and a PDF that all of you can have it if you want to. But if you don't ask for it, you're not going to have it. So when you leave this place, you need to make sure that you let them know that you want to have it. Understood? Right? How many of you here learned one thing tonight? How many of you? Okay. Okay, very good. So I did pretty good. I'm sure some of you knew all of it already, but that's okay. Right? So now I want to answer some questions if you have any. And then we're going to go from there. Dr. Cody's going to pass that little piece of paper. Hopefully I have enough for everybody. Go ahead there.
So you said, like when you fasting, you can do veggies and fruits. What about if you don't eat veggies?
What about if you don't eat vegetables?
I don't eat vegetables, only carrots.
You're in trouble.
Yeah, no sugar.
I eat a lot of fruits, but no veggies.
Yeah. And what is your question again?
No, you said when you're fasting, you can do like water, veggies, and fruits. I don't eat veggies.
If you do a Daigneault's fast. A Daigneault's fast is fruits, vegetables, and water. Right? I mean, you can choose when you do a personal fast what you're going to do. What I said earlier was clearly I would try to do the best that I can if I was to fast. And if you don't eat vegetables, I mean, I would just stop eating. But I'm just kidding. I guess you could stop eating for a little bit. But what I'm saying is if you only eat fruits and carrots, which carrots are loaded with sugar, right? Then what happens is your body still will go, it's still hard on your pancreas, it's still hard on your, it's still hard on your liver, still hard on your adrenals, right? So maybe I would consider you could also take some vegetables in powder, right? If you don't eat them, you could take it in powder. You could take it in capsules, right? Some people do that. So there's many companies that make some great organic vegetables. We have those in here that are in powder, and you could have that. And I would, if you don't eat vegetables, for sure, anybody that comes to our office, if they don't eat vegetables, what doesn't happen very often, but it does happen in some cases, we give people, some greens, because that's really important. Right? Yes, young lady?
When you were talking about being hydrated,
Yes.
I got 1 and 2, but I didn't get the third one.
Oh, I don't think that. I was waiting for somebody to ask me.
Yeah, that's not on here.
70 or 80% water.
So the number 1 is you got to drink water.
Right.
Number 2 is you have to digest properly, right? And the reason, now listen, all of you here, you look wiser to me. For most of you, some of you look like you're kids still, but not many, right? When you pass the age of 40, now listen, when you pass the age of 40, which there's many of us in here, now listen to me. When you pass the age of 40 years old, your stomach, the ability of your stomach to produce hydrochloric acid goes down every year after the age of 40. Right? So what happens is if you eat the SAD diet, it stands for the Standard American Diet, what most people eat, right? Your digestive enzyme goes down after the age of 40. Right? So what happened is one of the recommendations that you should be doing is you should be considering taking digestive enzyme. Right? Digestive enzyme that has hydrochloric acid in it. Because, right, your body will just will break down the protein with hydrochloric acid. If you don't have hydrochloric acid, the stuff's going to be in your stomach, it's going to rot, it's going to turn into organic acid, it's going to shoot back up. It's called acid reflux, and then guess what? The doctor's got a pill for that. Right? Maybe he's got 2. Maybe some of you have been taking those pills for 20, 30 years. What happens is when you take antacid, you can't assimilate minerals. You can't live if you don't assimilate minerals. It's right there on the box. If you take those medications, it's right there on the box. It tells you. It's going to shut down the absorption of calcium. That's okay. We'll do a hip replacement. It will also shut down the absorption of iron. That's okay. You have anemia. We'll have a pill for that too. Right? Do you see how this is nonsense? It's nonsense. You cannot be on those drugs. You should not be on those drugs. There's not one person in 20 years I haven't been able to get off those medication. As long as they listen. If they don't listen, well, of course I can't. Right? So after the age of 40, I'm going to repeat this here one more time. After the age of 40, your digestive enzyme goes down, right? So then you should consider taking some hydrochloric acid, some digestive enzyme that has hydrochloric acid, or, right, some of you here, I know you're just a big fan of apple cider vinegar, right? You just drink apple cider vinegar with meal, right? Now, if you can't do that, some of you, you're just like, you need to flex your muscle. Some of you don't like to flex your muscle. You have those little gummies that are loaded with sugar, right? You're like, oh yeah, Dr. Jean-Guy, I take apple cider vinegar and gummies. I'm like, what's that? Right? Because of course those companies, they're just going to make up anything and everything that they can sell you, that they can be like, sucker, right? Oh yeah, Dr. Jean-Guy, I take apple cider vinegar and gummies. Those gummies are loaded with sugar. You shouldn't take that. But there is some apple cider vinegar in capsules. That's probably a better choice. Right? So hydrochloric acid. Okay, so that was number 1. Number 2 is proper digestion. And then number 3 is you need to have enough minerals into your diet. Where do you find minerals? Is in fruits and vegetables. In fruits and vegetables. You should try to have twice as many vegetables you have fruit. Twice as many vegetables you have fruit. Right? Dr. Denise now, she wants to pass the mic because, I don't know. She wants to get me in trouble. Okay. Okay. I'm going to repeat the question that this young lady had here. Her name is Deb. She says, you talk about there's 3 ways that you can improve your hydration. Number 1, drinking enough water. Number 2, digesting your food properly. And then number 3, having enough mineral into your diet. Right? Fruits and vegetables is where you have most of your minerals. Right? And then there's also some organic food supplements that has minerals in it. The next person that has a question, Dr. Denise is going to run the mic. Run the mic, Dr. Denise. This young lady back there, her hands was up. So let's take care of her right now. Maybe I answered the question already.
You mentioned that stevia and comfort is good. What about xylitol and erythritol?
Yeah, in many cases it's okay as far as not affecting blood sugar, but in some people, when they do it, they start having gut problem. Right? So if you are a person that it's not affecting you, but there's many people that I test clinically that when they have those kind of sugar, then they start having some gastrointestinal issues. But from a sugar perspective, as far as increasing blood sugar, it doesn't do that. Okay. Yeah. Yes, sir. Okay, Dr. Denise, you got to run faster. This guy is right there, right next to this young lady. You were right there, honey. Let's give him the mic for a minute. And then Eric's going to get the mic, and then this lady's going to get the mic. Let's do it.
Just out of curiosity, you were an overcoming diabetic, and you were getting extremely dizzy. Do you have any kind of barometer on how far you can take that?
Number 1, okay, time out. I've never overcome diabetes, okay? Maybe you just heard my story about my father, but no, that was not me. No, I did not overcome diabetes. No, I don't have any chronic illnesses. But if a person has diabetes, overcoming dizziness, is that what you said?
Especially in fasting.
Yeah, the overcoming of dizziness has to do...
How far that goes, I'm sure it's okay to go with that.
What does that mean, how far? I want to make sure I understand your question.
You know, there's dizzy, there's dizzier.
Yeah.
Bam, I hit the floor.
Yeah, well, common sense says to me that, there's people that are walking around, just like you said, that they could have a little bit of dizziness. I mean, if you cannot get off the chair, that's a problem. Yeah. Right? So, in those cases, when you go through a fast, what I would do, right? What I would do is I would start eating coconut oil. And the reason for that is because coconut oil is a medium-chain fatty acid. It doesn't take a transporter to get into the cells and give energy. Right? So a person you could do that on a gradient. Right? You could do that on a gradient. There is some cases that people might not go straight on a fast and doing this 100%, right? Versus a person not having any chronic illnesses. Remember, at the end of the day here, Dr. Jean-Guy, just listen to me. Okay, let's have common sense. Yes? Let's have common sense. If you're going to fall over, you're going to pass out, you're not going to be functional. I didn't say to go through that. I didn't say that. Right? I just say maybe number 1, you need somebody to work with you, right? So don't be silly. Have somebody that has experience that can help you out to take you through the process. That's why I said, hey, we have this place here that can help you. Right? Obviously, if you have chronic illnesses, right, you can work on your health like all of us, even if we don't yet. Right? So if you do have chronic illnesses, it's like, okay, what is my next one step? That's what I want you to work on. What's my next one step? What is God telling me? Right? And have somebody that's going to be helping you out that has the expertise to take you to the promised land. Yes? Yes? Say yes. Okay, very good. Okay, now this guy right here, his name is Eric. Give him the mic. Did you have a question?
No, what's my question?
You didn't have a question. Okay, what's the next person? This person, she's right there. Go ahead.
Somebody told me that, like, on the Daigneault fast, you can have nuts and seeds and whole grains. So, first, is that true? And second, I've heard a lot of conflicting things about, like, peanuts, legumes, kind of thing. Is that worse for you to have?
Well, let's talk about the Daigneault fast yet. I mean, I didn't read that. Right? Sometimes people, they just like start adding stuff, so it's just... Remember about this thing about this sacrificial, right? If you're going to have everything you want, it's not called a fast. Right? Let's just make this clear right now. Number two is now if you're asking a question in nutrition in general about, peanuts. Peanuts are just considered to be like dirty, they're dirty because they have this thing that grows on them called aflatoxins. So basically they don't do well with the bodies. There's many people that don't do well with it because the way they're being processed and the way the molds is growing on it. But it's the same thing with nuts. Right? So there's many people, they think they have problems with nuts. They don't really have problems with nuts. They just have problems with the molds that are growing on the nuts, which is very common. Right? Okay. So hopefully this was helpful. This young lady here, go ahead. We don't have time for the mic. Go ahead. Go out loud. Loud.
You said that spring water is good. So what about carbonated water?
Carbonated water.
Yeah, bubbly water. Is it good?
Yeah, but see, you can have a machine at home that's going to make bubbly water with your reverse osmosis, right? I don't have any problems with bubbly water. I just want to make sure that there's minerals in the water. The water has the minerals in it, right? So this is what's important. If the water is dead, it's not good for anybody's body. That's why reverse osmosis is fine, right? If your water is, you live in the city of Lansing and there's 56 different chemicals that you can't smell or taste in it, and then you're going to have a reverse osmosis system at your house, right? That's fine. But you got to be thinking that if I have reverse osmosis in my water and I'm drinking dead water, I got to have minerals somewhere. Do you understand that people, once they pass the age of 40, I mean, not me, but you guys, right? Once you pass the age of 40, what happens is many people have cramps in their legs at night. They can't sleep. Do you know why that is? Because they're low in minerals, right? There's not one person I haven't been able to fix with leg cramps. Not one. Not one. Do you understand? Not one. It's not like I got to go see the doctor and I got to get a magic pill. It's like you're nutritionally dying, right? It's not enough minerals. This young lady right here, and then it's going to be this other young lady. Go ahead, I'm listening.
I actually have two questions. So I was going to do the Daigneault fast.
Yes.
I thought I heard you mention about like trying to eat more in fats. What should I eat for?
If you're going to go on a Daigneault fast, water, fruits, and vegetables. A Daigneault fast is water, fruits, and vegetables. That's what that is, right? What I said about fat, and that's good. Thank you for bringing that up, because obviously, if that was not understood by you, there's probably other people that did not understand. As I said, right? There's also this thing called a fast of your choice. Right? And if you decide to do some fasting, right? I personally believe you should not be fasting with sugar. You should not be fasting with, putting maple syrup in your water, drinking that all day. I understand some of you are just like, oh yeah, Dr. Jean-Guy, some people teach that and it's healthy. Hey, listen, if you think it's healthy, go ahead and do it. I'm just telling you that physiologically, for me, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. When you put sugar in your body, whether it's raw honey or whether it's maple syrup, it's going to do the same thing physiologically. And if you're not healthy, right, it's not going to make you better by the time you're done physiologically. Now, if God tells you to do that, I'm not going to argue with God. Do you understand that? Right? But if you're going to be choosing your own fast and you want to try to improve your health, I say to you, if you're going to be eating something, if you're going to be, something besides just drinking water, right? if you're going to be putting something in this fine machine, you should be putting some fat. Because if you put some fat in, right, then your body still doesn't have sugar, which is the path of least resistance. When your body doesn't have sugar, then it's going to go after your own fat. Now, I would dare to say that most of you in here, that's what you would like. Okay, maybe not. I could be wrong, but just saying. I'm asking for a friend. Okay, this young lady right here.
I'm not that young. I would just like to add to your wonderful talk here that if we were to actually eat the actual portion, 1/2 cup of ice cream, you could have ice cream twice a week. And I'm a diabetic and hypothyroid and have BRCA2, cancer, breast, skin, gene. Just found out a year ago. 3 of my 4 daughters inherited it too. But anyway, I'm just saying, if we actually measured or weighed our food instead of eating, my favorite before I knew 10 years ago I was a type 2 diabetic, my favorite thing to eat would be the whole wheat or buckwheat pancake as big as a platter, with healthy blueberries in it. But of course now, a 4-inch pancake isn't going to kill you. I don't know, there's so many things. I mean, that's not fasting, but I just thought add to that, consider it. If fasting seems too extreme, by golly, I bet you we'll all lose some weight, get healthier, shrink our stomach if you actually measure 3 tablespoons of this, if that's the serving. And just try that too. I mean, don't think you have to go cold turkey if you think you can.
Anybody else has a questions here?
I do.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so how does fasting, specifically intermittent fasting, affect women versus men differently as it relates to hormone balance?
Isn't it time to go home right now? I mean, if you're a lady and you're intermittent fast, I mean, it's always going to be harder for you, that's for sure. So her question was, this is not a question about fasting, it's just a question in general, that the way that God made a woman and a man as it relates to hormones, right? That you have to deal with hormones that will have an effect on fat storage in the body, and estrogen is one of them. Okay? So what happened is, whether you're a man or woman, right, when you do intermittent fasting, and of course all the ladies in the room, you just hate men because, they just don't eat for 2 minutes, they lose 10 pounds. And then you don't eat for a week and you lose 1 pound. Right? So the way that it's affecting, which is not just an intermittent fasting, at least in my experience, clinically, nutritionally, right? Because a woman has been made by God differently as it relates to, progesterone, estrogen, right? Testosterone, and all of those hormones. Now listen, we didn't talk much about this tonight. It's not the time to do so, but the only thing I want to say about that is all of the food that we are eating, because they're putting pesticides and hormones and antibiotic on them, those are all estrogen derivative. So as a result of that, right, then even for you ladies here in the room, you already have like this little check that you already have more of those, this hormone balance, it's already tricky, right? But then you have the food that comes into the chain that is even, adding to all of that, right? So Michaela's question here is, when it's all said and done, I don't think it's just an intermittent fasting thing. I think it's for any men and women by the time you pass the age of 40, right? Or, matter of fact, you see in this country right now on the news every single day, people that are dying, young kids that are playing basketball, that are playing football. Why do you think they're dying? They're dying because they're on a sad diet. They're dying because they live in this world, right? And this world is run by Satan. And guess what? He doesn't want you to be healthy, right? God wants you to be healthy, but Satan doesn't want you to be healthy, right? And you're being enticed by the things of the world. And if you're not watching out for that, then you're never going to be as healthy as God wants you to be healthy. That's just the bottom line, right? That's really what I want you to know tonight, right? Okay, there's one more question before we close this up. Go ahead, young man.
Jesus commanded his disciples to fast and pray
Yeah.
for a particular problem that he had in healing. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, he says Jesus was telling his disciple, praying and fasting. Is that, are you talking about a particular, like what he was asking his disciple?
There was a problem,
Yeah, he says this, you're talking about this specific healing. When he says this, you can only get through it with prayer and fasting.
yeah.
Yeah. So I don't have an expertise here in theology and in the Bible, but my interpretation of my reading over the years of reading this passage, this particular, right? I believe that the closer that we get to the Lord, right? The closer that we get to the Lord through fasting and prayer, right? Mightier things will happen because of our obedience and our relationship that we have cultured with Him, right? Those scripture that we showed you tonight, that, the rewards that happen, in public, it's usually based on what happened in private first, right? So my interpretation, which is not a whole lot here to stand on, but what I would say to you when I read this over and over, what I'm getting from this and the revelation I get from this is the closer we get to Him, right, through prayer and fasting, and whatever that, we are doing to, through worship and praise, right, the more that we'll be able to do on His behalf and to be a cleaner vessel, right, for Him to be able to work through us. I don't know if this was acceptable, but that was my answer. Okay. I want to say thank you for coming in tonight. Okay, I just appreciate it and love all of you. Hopefully I'll see you on our next month. Brandy is back there. If you want to ready to schedule your appointment, go ahead and do so. Thank you for being here tonight. I am going home. I'm going to go drink my water. Just kidding.